Today we will be looking at the difference quotient. So notice the expression, when we see the difference quotient, f of x plus h minus f of x all divided by h when h is not equal to 0 is called the difference quotient for that specific function. And we use the difference quotient, for those of you that choose to take calculus in the future, to in the derivative process. Okay, so let's look at the first example. I'm going to break it down into 3 steps. So notice where you have an example where it says we're going to find and simplify using the difference quotient. Notice the first thing we see in the formula is this f of x plus h. Okay, so that was the first thing that I would do. I would find f of x plus h. So remember, you're going to write your f function, put empty parentheses where the x is, and we're going to replace that x with an x plus h. And then we're going to simplify that. We just distribute the 4, so it would be 4x plus 4h. The second step is to recopy the original function. We know that is 4x. And then your third step is to actually do the difference quotient itself. Now, once you get really good at these, I'm not going to verify you did all 3 steps, but once you do get good at them, you can just go to step 3. So notice we're going to start off with that f of x plus h, which we know to be 4x plus 4h. Oh, that's highlighter. Notice the next part of the difference quotient says minus f of x. So we found 4x, so minus 4x. And then the last thing we notice we have divided by h. Now, what do we notice happens here when we simplify? Hopefully you recognize that the 4x's, when you combine like terms, cancel out. So 4h divided by h. The h's cancel out, so our difference quotient of the function 4x is just 4. Now I want you to take a minute or 2 and try that example you tried. And hopefully you found the difference quotient for f of x equals 7x to be 7. Okay, so notice we have 2 more examples, and we're going to practice finding and simplifying that difference quotient. So we're just going to follow the same 3 steps that we were doing before. I'm going to zoom in really big so I have the space. And remember, that first step is to find f of x plus h. So we're going to take our original function, take the x out, and put x plus h in its place. And then we're just going to simplify that. So 3x plus 3h plus 7. Remember, the second step is to recopy that f of x function. And then the third step is to actually do the difference quotient. So f of x plus h minus f of x all divided by h. So notice we're going to start with that f of x plus h, which we found up in this step. So 3x plus 3h plus 7. And then we're going to subtract the f of x. Now, because you have multiple terms, I would highly recommend you put parentheses around it. The biggest mistake, remember, is that distributing process, and that is all over h. Okay, so when we simplify, we know we'll have 3x plus 3h plus 7. Now, if you aren't going to remember to do this process, what you can also do is change the subtraction sign to a plus, and then change the sign of the 3x to negative and the 7 to a negative. So we'll have minus 3x minus 7 all over h. Now, when we simplify, notice we have a positive 3x with the negative 3x, which is 0x. And 7 minus 7, which is 0. So it's very similar to what we had before. When we simplify, we have 3h over h, and then those h's cancel out, so our difference quotient for the function 3x plus 7 is 3. We're going to do a similar process here with f of x equals 2x squared. Now, the first step is to find f of x plus h. Now, this one is a little different. Notice we'll have two, a parenthesis, a empty parenthesis, and then a squared. And then we put all of, we put all of x plus h in those parentheses. Now, remember, you're going to write the x plus h twice and then distribute. Okay, so we'll have the 2, and then we'll have our x squared plus xh plus xh plus h squared. And then we distribute the 2 through. So 2x squared, when we put these together, that's 2xh times 2 is 4xh plus 2h squared. Good. Now, the second step is to recopy your f of x. And remember, we found that to be 2x squared. And the third step is to actually do the difference quotient. F of x plus h minus f of x all over h. Okay, so the first part is the f of x plus h, which we found in step 1 to be 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared. And then notice we have a subtraction, and we're going to subtract our original function, 2x squared, and all of that is divided by h. Now, there's no distributing here for the negative, but we do notice the 2x squareds cancel out. So we're left with 4xh plus 2h squared all over h. Now, what do you notice all those terms have in common? Well, you can factor out the h in the numerator, and you're left with 4x plus 2h over h squared. And then hopefully you recognize, not h squared, what am I doing? The h's, they cancel out. And so our final answer is just 4x plus 2h. Ta-da! I want you to take a minute or two and try the 2 example U-tries. Okay, so hopefully for A, you just found 6 as your difference quotient for f of x equals 6x plus 1. For B, for f of x equals x squared, hopefully you found 2x plus h. Now, remember when we did our distributing here, we wrote it twice, and then we did x times x times h times x, and h times h, and when you combine like terms, that does become 2xh. Okay, so we have 2 more examples left, and just like we did before, we're just going to practice finding and simplifying the difference quotient. We just have a little bit more of a complex function. So remember our 3 steps until you get really good, and then you can just go straight to the difference quotient. So the first step is to find f of x plus h, and we can do that with replacing all of the x's with an x plus h. So now, to save space, if you want to, off to the side, multiply x plus h with itself. Let's see, x squared plus xh plus hx plus h squared. Well, that's x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. Okay, so we're just going to replace that here. And remember to distribute the negative 4 through the x and the h. So minus 4x, minus 4h, and then plus 3. And now we're ready for step 2, which is to recopy our original function. And then our next step is to do the difference quotient. Okay, so if you've forgotten what that is, remember you'll do f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So we found the first portion up in step 1, and it is kind of long. Let's see, we have x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 4x minus 4h plus 3. And now we're going to subtract that original f of x, the x squared minus 4x plus 3, all over h. Now when we simplify, you can either rewrite it, or you can, when you distribute your negative through, change the subtraction sign to plus and then change all the signs inside those parentheses. And then look and see what happens. The x squareds cancel out. The 4x's cancel out. And the 3's cancel out. So notice a trend here. Every time we do this difference quotient thing, notice we have h's just left in the numerator. Okay, so let's see, we have 2xh plus h squared minus 4h all over h. And you can either recognize that you're going to divide everything through by a factor of h, or you can factor out an h in the numerator. And then simplify those h's. Let's see, 2x plus h minus 4, and that's your difference quotient. Ta-da! Okay, so notice we're going to do another problem. Okay, so the first step is to do f of x plus h. So we'll write our original function, take out the x's, and remember we'll do x plus h in those empty parentheses. Now we've already found x plus h quantity squared, and we did that on the previous example. So I'm just going to copy that down, and then also distribute the negative 5 through. Negative 5x minus 5h plus 7. Now, the next thing we have to do is distribute this 2 through, and then we should be good to go with this step. 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared minus 5x minus 5h plus 7. Now we're ready for the second step, which is just to recopy our f of x function. And now our third step is to actually do the difference quotient, which, if you've forgotten, f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. So here we go. The first portion we found in step 1, and that is that ginormo long one, 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared minus 5x minus 5h plus 7. And now we're going to subtract our original function, in parentheses 2x squared minus 5x plus 7, and divide all that by h. Now remember, we're going to distribute this negative or change all those signs in those parentheses, and let's see what happens. 2x squareds are canceled, the 5x's are canceled, and the 7's are canceled. So that means all we have remaining is the 4xh plus 2h squared minus 5h all over h. And now we can take out a factor of h. 4x plus 2h minus 5 all over h. Notice the h's cancel, and we're left with 4x plus 2h minus 5. Ta-da! I want you to take a minute and try this last example you tried. Okay, so hopefully you found your difference quotient for f of x equals x squared minus 5x plus 8 to be 2x plus h minus 5. Yay, it's time to practice the end.